everybody. This is Robin Hyatt. I'm going to share with you a few things about Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, what a wonderful man, and gave us a lot of things in all different areas. I did a recording of this already, but I think through copyright, I am to do it again. So Bruce Lee had a lot of wisdom, and there's a lot of books out there of his wisdom and of the things that he wrote. So I'm going to just give you a couple excerpts of things that he wrote. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about his life. I also did a automatic writing that at the end of this, I will talk to you about automatic writing that I did of him. So loving well and loving wisely. I did love like a madman, but have enough sense to not love as a fool. It isn't so easy to love too well, and so difficult to love wisely. Defeat is a state of mind. Defeat is a state of mind. No one is ever defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Subconscious mind. Recognizing the influences of my subconscious mind over power of will. I shall take care to submit to it a clear and definite picture of my major purpose in life and all minor purposes leading to my major purpose. And I shall keep this picture constantly before my subconscious mind by repeating it daily. I thought that was very interesting. So Bruce Lee, when he was born, he got cholera and he was very sick. And I think he had a brother that died of it. So he was very sick and almost on the brink of death. And he luckily survived. The mom said she coddled him. Then when Bruce grew to be about 4 or 5, he had unamounts of energy. He was just everywhere, bouncing off of everything. They said they just couldn't get him to slow down or stop. ADHD and maybe hyper mode is what he had. So what they did, they found that worked for him to slow him down was to give him a comic book at about 5 or 6. And he started immersing himself in reading and books. So let me open this up real fast. And that is his parents. And that's Bruce Lee as a baby. And so he immersed himself in comic books and like kung fu comic books. And he always imagined himself as being the hero, like almost every probably child does. And he also was inquisitive. He wanted to know why about everything. He asked his parents tirelessly, why this, why that, why this? And I don't know if you remember as a kid that I was one of those kids too. And so when I received an answer, I would say, well, why that answer? That answer needs to have another why with it. And it drove my mom crazy until I stopped asking because she just said, and my mom actually was a pretty smart woman. So a lot of times when she would give me an answer, I would say, okay, that sounds great to me. So Bruce Lee was inquisitive, hyperactive. And then as he grew older in his teen years, isn't that cute? That's so cute of him. And that in his teen years, he developed his own gang. And I don't know if it's called he was called the Little Dragon or something like that. But in this gang, had about a dozen young men, and they followed him. He was a leader, and he, I believe, hopefully I don't have this wrong, but there was some fighting, and I think he did some ring fighting, where 2 kids go into the ring and fight, and he would come home all bruised and battered, and he tried to stay away from his parents because he didn't want his parents to know he was fighting, because I guess like in Hong Kong and stuff, that is just like a bad thing. And then the dad found out, saw some of his bruises and stuff. He couldn't hide it any longer. All the stuff happening to him. And so his dad said, "You're a disgrace to the family." Da, da, da. And so, so Bruce Lee, um, the family, if I remember correctly, moved. There's something to do with San Francisco. I don't know if he was born in San Francisco, then they went to Hong Kong, or vice versa. But as he became into the United States, he, as you know, became more successful and successful. He had drive, he had a vision, and he was going to make a name for himself. And he worked hard, you know. And I thought something that he had said was very interesting, that a lot of times to be successful, you need people. You need other people to help you be successful. And I thought that was very interesting that he said that, because a lot of times you can't be successful on your own. You think you could do it yourself, but a lot of times you need people. So if you're promoting yourself or promoting a business, you actually need people to help you with that business, to help it grow. Makes a lot of sense to me. And he had a lot of life lessons as he grew and grew in the Hollywood field. And you know everything about his life from Hollywood on. And he said that he became really good friends with Steve McQueen. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but he became good friends with Steve McQueen. And who else? Who was? Oh, there's a couple others that he always kept one of his childhood friends as his manservant. And so this childhood friend always was by his side and always with him. And he trusted him. He said that was one of the only people that he trusted, which is usually a common denominator when people stay with you from childhood. While he was living in the United States, life was challenging in Hollywood because they didn't feel he was a leading man. Even though he was spectacular and had the charisma, they felt he wasn't a leading man. And so they would put an American person in to fight him, et cetera, for billing rights, I'm sure, of Hollywood. Unfortunately, he felt a lot of this was unfair, and he had some health issues also. He hurt his back while he was, he had a morning routine where he would exercise and lift. And I read that he had 125-pound, I don't know if it was a block or if it was weights that he would put on his back and then lift up his back, and lift them up and lift them up to grow strength. Well, he forgot to warm up this one morning, and he put the weights on his back, and it blew out ligaments and things like that. The doctors told him that he would never be able to lift his legs again in fighting. That's how bad the injury was. And he always disagreed. And it was mind over matter. And he came back and he came back and he came back. He actually in his life had injuries, and he just would come back from those injuries. I think one of the greatest successes of Bruce Lee is his family and his wife. He married I believe, American wife, and had 2 children. And I think you know who the children are. And I really think he was a good dad. I think when he was present, he was a good dad. I don't think the children would have ever said anything negative about their dad. In fact, Bruce Lee's daughter has a podcast I could post on here. And in her podcast, she talks about the wisdom of her father and all the good things that her father did, which is quite a legacy. And she wants to keep it going, and she should. Also to help the Chinese people that are trying to make a stand for themselves and their culture and who they are. And she tries to give them a leg up, which is awesome because I think things have gotten better this day and age of people's nationalities, but still, I think there's still judgmental things happening. Bruce Lee moved back later when he was kind of frustrated, I think, with Hollywood. He had a better. He said he was as famous. He was more famous than the Beatles in Asia, and so he moved back there. I believe Hong Kong, if I'm not correct. Hopefully, I'm correct. I'm trying to do this by memory. And so he moved back, and and had a nice life there and did films and became really successful. Number one, he said, you strive all your life to be successful, to be wealthy, to have it all. And then once you have it all, you lose something. You have to lose something. And what you give up is your freedom. And it's because you're so recognized, you can't do anything or go anywhere without being bothered or people gawking at you or looking at you or wanting your autograph. He also, Steve McQueen told him, when you're outside of the movies, you have to dress for success. You always have to look successful. And so Bruce Lee took that on in clothing. So he was very stylish. Let's see if I can find that. There, very stylish. He always, and his cars were the epitome of nice cars. And so he had a good life, but there's something underlying happening with him. He was at a studio. This was after the filming of the Dragon movie. That was one of his most prominent movies. And he was in the studio because they had to do some dubbing of some of the film. And I guess because of the studio's air conditioner, because I guess it's very humid in Hong Kong in that area, that it was very hot in that studio, extremely hot. And so because they couldn't use the air conditioning because it was too loud. And so here he is, sweating, hot, anxious. And then something happened to him. He started feeling extremely ill. He went to the bathroom and he fainted. He vomited and he was just having a very hard time. One of the studio hands came into the bathroom and Bruce Lee said he was so embarrassed that he didn't want them to know that he was ill. So he acted like he was on the ground because he dropped his glasses and he couldn't find his glasses. So they took him back to the studio. They said they almost had to carry him back to studio because he couldn't walk. He got back in the studio, fainted again, and then started having a seizure. So a lot of these signs working in the medical field is an overdose, especially with the heat also. And it also could be just the heat could have gotten to him because people can throw up if they get too much heat exhaustion. So they ended up actually taking him to the hospital because he was spasming and going into seizures. And having a hard time breathing. So they got him in the hospital. They had Dr. meet him there. And they also had a neural surgeon waiting just to see. And so this neurosurgeon, these were in Hong Kong also, not in the United States. He felt that he had swelling on the brain that was causing the illness and all these symptoms. And then Bruce Lee finally told him that he was taking a product, and I wrote it down here. The product is Nepalese temple balls. And he learned about these. Bruce Lee learned about these from Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen takes it. It's a hash. And so Steve McQueen said, hey, take these. It calms you down, gives you, calm energy. You can concentrate, So Bruce Lee started his journey with these. And there's no other report. He also liked sake. He could down like 20 little sakes. They said that he could just down those sakes, which is a really strong, horrible alcohol drink. And so those were like his only two vices that I ever have read. I do believe, as I was doing research on these temple balls, Nepalese temple balls, let me talk to you a little bit about that. They're robust cannabis concentrate crafted, gathering the resin of the cannabis sticky hair-like appendages on the flower, compressing them into a solid form. It originated from Nepal region in the Himalayan mountains, cultivated the resin-rich plants, and they said it was never smoked, but it was always compressed into a food. The lost art of temple balls The creation of is tedious and masterful in process. I believe in this because they call it a resin, which is very interesting. I looked them up and it kind of looks like this most horriblest thing you've ever seen. It's like this green, awful thing. And I guess he said it didn't taste that bad. But I do believe that he didn't think that it could hurt his body. And so he would take these quite a bit and munch on them all the time. And I somehow believe that a fungus can grow in them or some sort of poison can be created through the compressing of it, and it can create a form of something that might be hazardous to the body. And I believe he did this for quite a long time. And I do believe that, or somehow he was allergic to them. I don't think everybody can take certain things. And with his body as a child, they said his small stature was due to his illness as a baby. So I do believe that it was doing something to his body, what he was taking. And the exertion on his body. And so he came back to the United States. He just really didn't believe that doctor in Hong Kong. So he came back to the United States and wanted to be checked over. And he wanted to a second opinion, which is smart. That's a smart thing to say. You just don't believe the first thing a doctor tells you, because he didn't believe he had swelling of the brain. And so he came to a doctor in Hollywood, and the doctor said that his body inside was like an 18-year-old. And Bruce Lee thought that was the most obvious, awesome thing any doctor could ever tell him. I guess he bragged about that quite a bit. And he told everybody, my doctor says my inside of my body is like an 18-year-old. And then shortly after that, he went back to this doctor also said there was no swelling on the brain. So Bruce believed everything. And so really you get two conflicting medical reports. He goes back to Hong Kong and he's continuing eating these temple balls. And I think he was overdoing it. I really do. And I believe that and who knows, it could be laced with something that he didn't know about, or it just produces some kind of toxin that he can't put into his body. Excuse me. And maybe he wasn't eating because they said he dropped from 140 pounds to 120 right before he died. And maybe he was just kind of living on these things as a food group. He went to a woman's house that was a short ways from where he lived, and he acted in movies with this woman, and she was very young. She was younger than him, and they had a relationship, and he was at her house, and they were eating these temple balls and not drinking. She said she didn't drink, and there's no other drugs, but they were just having these temple balls. And they had a relationship, unfortunately, because he was married at the time. But that's just, I guess, he had a family. I think he loved and respected his family, and then he had his little fun additives, and so she was part of that. And so he went through the same symptoms. He started feeling nauseated, started losing his balance, started feeling out of it, the extreme headaches, etc., etc. They were supposed to meet a friend for dinner, and she says, Bruce, just go ahead and lay down, and then we'll just meet this friend later. And so he did. And so she didn't check on him for about 3 hours, just thought he needed to sleep it off. She also gave him a painkiller medication that was a prescription of hers, and she had given it to him before. And not sure, anything about that, but she says he took it before and he was fine. But this time he wasn't fine. So he was laying on one of their mattresses on the floor. And when she went to check in on him about 9:30 at night, he had no response. He was not responding. So instead of calling an ambulance or anything like medical, she called this man that they were going to meet up for dinner, which he's in the industry somehow. And he came over And then he realized that I think Bruce was in a heavy comatose setting at that time. I don't think he was actually gone, but they thought he had passed. So they decided, or not they, this man decided that we need to do a cover up. So with Bruce not being clothed, they put all his clothes on him and dressed him to the T with all his nice clothes. And then they took him to another facility. They took him out of her home because they said he can't be found here because you're his liaison. And so they took him to another home. And then they called the ambulance. And of course, he had passed by that time. And Bruce, let's see, let me go. So as an intuitive, I felt him with me. And then I said, just give me some words that you want me to write down, because I still have a respect for his family that's still here. And he had written, change is changeless. To change with change is the changeless state. I thought that was awesome. And then what Bruce wrote about success means doing something sincerely and wholeheartedly. And you have to have the help of other people to achieve it. That's what I was talking to you at the beginning. And let's see. This is what he wrote. For every season, there is change of mind, life, and body. The only thing that stays steady is the soul. If your soul and body are not aligned, there is loss. My life was a mechanism of change for my race, change for the art of Jeet Kune Do. The efficiency of the body and mind should flow like water, form and mold into each other freely to promote the most complete duty of life force. Once you attain this flow, you will receive a release of societal humanity, and you will be able to rise and ascend to your own personal state of perfection or nirvana. I was born for this purpose, to relive all my past lives to this one earthly moment, to open the door to my own personal nirvana. Although I did lose my way in the process of fame and the derivative of wealth, I listened to others and I lost my way. I was so close to attaining my own passageway with the dragon. I brought forth the legend. I promised I would, but I lost the game of eternal constitution of body and soul. I wish I had more time on this earth, because I do believe I would have surpassed that lesson and quieted my mind on fleeting thoughts and perceptions. I would have stood as a sentinel of calm, quiet, lingering perceptions of thought and messages. I could have grown larger as a legend of the Chinese man to the world if I had more time. I died at my own constraints. Shun what is trivial and discard what is ornamental. Signing off, Bruce Lee.